today's World Insight. The Taliban facing big tests on governance and diplomacy weeks after sweeping into power. But how is the Taliban coping with the biggest test yet to keep millions of struggling Afghans fed and sheltered? And China's mammoth energy company in a massive transition to green energy at the core of the country's carbon neutrality efforts. What's the strategy? Direct answers from the executive chairman of the State Grid Corporation of China.
Here is our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. 4 weeks after taking back the reins of ruling Afghanistan, the Taliban's interim government faces big tests of its ability to govern. There have been reports of a supposed power struggle among the so-called pragmatic and ideological Taliban leaders over the makeup of the new quote-unquote government. The Taliban have denied this. They did say they are willing to have good relations with other countries, but no nation has recognized the Taliban government yet. So what steps could the Taliban take to rebuild the country, and what will it take to improve international relations? Let's loop in our panelists. For more on the discussion, joining us in Washington, Junaid Ahmad, the director of the Center for Global Dialogue and professor of Middle Eastern Politics from University of Lahore in Pakistan. In Chapel Hill, Klaus Laris, distinguished professor of history and international affairs from University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. In Beijing, Zhou Rong, senior analyst from Chongyang Institute of Financial Studies at Renmin University of China. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. I want to start by asking you, Mr. Ahmad, 1 month already in Kabul. Has the Taliban's performance so far satisfying to you?
Whether it's the Taliban or any other force, political actor, coming in the conditions that it did, one can't expect much more this quickly from any political actor coming into power, satisfying, as I was saying, all of these various interests, domestically and internationally. So taking that into consideration, I think they've done okay.
All right. Professor Laris, what about your take?
Well, I'm not quite sure if they've done okay because we hardly know anything about the new government. It's an interim government. We know the various people who occupy various government positions, but we don't really know much more. What we have found out recently is that there seems to have been a clash between a more hardline Taliban faction and a more moderate diplomatic faction within the Taliban. And I don't know whether they have gotten their act together, whether in the end a compromise was achieved, or whether they are still kind of fighting each other. So we will find out soon. But the Taliban are faced with fundamental tasks. In the economic situation is very bad. The humanitarian situation is bad. There's pressure from outside on the Taliban government, whether or not they should be recognized.
Yeah.
And there, of course, are very complex relations with the neighboring countries, including Pakistan and many others. So I think the tasks they are faced with are totally enormous.
I think it is very hard right now. Still, indeed, does not indicate there's a forming of the inclusive government. And currently, they try to say they would like to protect the women's rights, but right now, they do not like women to go to school, and they do not have the pragmatic policy. And this, of course, they said they would like to educate some women in certain kind of condition, but actually to practice that, let all the grassroots region to implement their promises, it's very hard. And the women may have their rights to go to the school and go to university, but right now they feel very harsh.
Okay. Mr. Ahmad, I saw your public speeches in a way trying to argue for the Taliban. Let me just ask you. We have several lines. One is so-called the older guards vis-a-vis the younger generation, and the other is so-called the more religious and more rigid faction of the Taliban vis-a-vis the more diplomatic one, more negotiate with the West branch of the Taliban. Mr. Ahmed, I remember our conversation weeks ago when Taliban just went into Kabul and you said, quote unquote, the so-called new Taliban. Now, do you still stick to your words, or there are different lines of observations to look at that organization?
No, I think that anyone that is familiar with what the Taliban was in the 1990s and what it is today, even if one considers the one right now with some hardline views, they're still worlds apart. Whether it's, and I think that we have to be very careful. Sometimes these binaries that we construct, whether it's the moderates versus the hardliners, or the old guard, new guard, these binaries are not helpful at times in actually understanding what's going on.
So what is helpful? So what is helpful?
Yeah. Well, I think that what is helpful is many of the Taliban leadership and others who have been groomed, say sitting in Qatar, but also, interestingly enough, by other countries in the region that we don't know much about, certainly Pakistan, but perhaps also from Russia, from China, and so on. So there's many Taliban who have been engaged, and so have a sense of how to kind of respond to the concerns of the international community domestically in Afghanistan. And of course, there's many others who have not had that exposure, who've not had that. So I think that's much more of a useful way of understanding how the Taliban movement is now adjusting to this new situation that it finds itself in.
Is it adjusting, Professor Laris, from your observation?
Well, I think one can say that the Taliban so far haven't proven to be as bad and disastrous as many have feared, but they haven't proven to be as inclusive and as modern and as liberals as many have hoped. They're somewhere in between, and we still don't know where it's going, which direction it's going, back to the 1990s or forward into a more liberal or more moderate future. That remains to be seen. And I think the next few weeks will certainly tell us an awful lot about that. At the moment, of course, it's the economic problems in the country and the starvation and the drought and all these hunger and poverty problems. These are the problems the Taliban have to deal with.
At this point, Professor Laris, I follow up because the international community has now recognized the Taliban. The UN got $1.1 billion pledge of humanitarian aid, and also 606 million emergency aid, so-called flash appeal already. But now it is still a process as to several things. One, whether it's going to be distributed and in cooperation with the Taliban or not, even though they're in power, they're the one very much need to coordinate with the United Nations, and the UN also need their support in order to get the humanitarian aid to the Afghans. Second is about whether they're going to really guarantee the security of the humanitarian process and the personnel in the process. And third is that whether the Taliban are trustworthy if it is really becoming part of the process of getting the humanitarian aid to the common Afghans, that there will not be much corruption, there will not be, putting the humanitarian aid to military use or for Taliban use alone. So a lot of different layers of observation that it seems that Taliban has to testify to the international community, Professor Laris.
Yeah, that's a good analysis. And of course, there's a great deal of suspicion and mistrust about the Taliban. And that is quite justified because we don't know them. We only know their past record, and the past record is very bad indeed. So foreign governments and the United Nations and other aid organizations are very hesitant to give all that aid money, $1 billion and more, as you said, to the Taliban government or interim government as such. They want to make sure that the money actually gets onto to the ground, to the people who really need it. They don't want to give it to some possibly corrupt minister who puts it into a bank account in Switzerland so that the people of Afghanistan don't benefit. If the Taliban
By the way,
prove
just
that
to be fair, we also heard
trustworthy,
about the corruptive cases involving earlier officials with the Republic of
Absolutely.
Afghanistan. Just to be fair.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. You can say almost everyone in Afghanistan has been highly corrupt who had to deal with money. And I think once the Taliban have proven that they can be trusted, that the money will be spent on the Afghanistan people and infrastructure and these kind of very useful economic measures, then I think aid deliveries will probably come more directly to the Taliban as such. And regarding recognition of the Taliban, that is of course also an instrument to force the Taliban to do the right thing. It's a kind of carrot which is being dangled. So if the Taliban prove to be moderate, prove to be reliable in that respect, then they can also be recognized.
Professor Joe Rohn, though, we have seen governments not officially recognizing Taliban, but a lot of governments are trying to approach the Taliban interim government, quote unquote, including China, Russia, Qatar, many, Pakistan certainly, and many others in the region. And also Germany, for example, the foreign minister of Germany was talking about there might be possibility of reopening the embassy in Kabul, which the Taliban has been repeatedly calling for to the foreign governments. But how do we see this kinds of testing water approach made by various governments who used to have very different relationships with the Taliban?
I think the most important things, everybody have seen Taliban is making progress. There's no slaughter, the social order is still calm, and everybody think that we should do our best to help Afghani people. So many countries wanted to recognize the Taliban region, but they have to wait first Taliban's image. The second, Taliban's recognition is whether Taliban region is illegitimate. What the impression for that is whether the government will be inclusive or not. But anyway, we all see the progress made by Taliban. They cannot build a new country with isolation from international community. They need help and they need urgent international aid. So let's wait and see. Trying to see more progress made by Taliban rather than more retreat from Taliban.
Mr. Ahmad, given the information you have, is the Taliban putting forward any specific benchmarks, timelines, deadlines for achieving specific goals?
Right. I mean, I think this has two angles to it. One is certainly, I mean, I think this is expected now of the Taliban. I mean, they've of course formed their interim government. Many people are critical that it's not inclusive enough, certainly of different ethnicities as well as of women and so on. And people are still testing the waters to see, what exactly will their program and plan will be.
So you're saying, Mr. Ahmad, that the Taliban has already met the first benchmark, which is to form, quote unquote, an interim government. Yet, in that benchmark, they have not achieved others' expectation of being, quote unquote, inclusive and open. Is that what you're trying to say?
Right. I mean, well, again, I mean, and their response is, well, this is an interim government, which brings me to the second part of what I'm saying is that, when the Taliban even entered Kabul and the presidential palace, I mean, they were actually expecting that they're going to be negotiating with some government that still exists there. It was, even they were surprised that they took over the country and became basically the rulers of the country so quickly. So on the other hand, we also have to concede that perhaps the Taliban themselves need some time to think through exactly how they're going to proceed further. I mean, and right now, the overarching issue is the humanitarian issue in the country. So it's not only dealing with all of these specific interests and the constituencies that have their interests, but also with the overarching economic crisis in the country.
Professor Zhou, is that also your impression, what Mr. Ahmad is trying to say?
Taliban is trying to distribute the medicine as well as the food to the common people, which the previous government have not done. Taliban is making progress. And what I think a pressing thing is to just attract some people, that is the people who leave the country, who are educated, who are skilled for the people, come back from overseas and try to help Taliban to governing the country. Because right now, Taliban need talent so much.
But that comes to an interesting question. If you are not inclusive at the top, how would the people trust you to come back? Right, so it's an interesting cycle that we're talking about. It's not about doing one thing at a time, but rather doing several things, all at a time.
Yeah, I think there's a conflict within Taliban ranks because some people said, "Oh, the new government should be more inclusive," but some said, "No, we should just give it over advantage to the people who just convert harshly toward against America." So that is, there should be differences. So that's why the inclusive government up to now has not been made right now. So that I think it will take some time, give Taliban more time to just adjust within their ranks. So that will be better.
Okay, Professor Laris, your thoughts.
Yes, I think the proof is in the pudding, really. If the Taliban achieve competency and efficiency and show competency and efficiency by making sure that the electricity keeps on, that the banking system is working again, that water is there to be drunk, that the population isn't starving, that enough food gets into the country, that the Harvard, which hasn't been destroyed so far, can still be brought in and is there to be used, that aid deliveries are efficiently distributed and get to the people who really need it. If all that, if they can prove all that, so prove to be efficient and competent, I think then they stand a very good chance of being recognized by the international community. And I think that is fair. If the Taliban prove to be competent and efficient and not the Taliban of the 1990s, and to also show a more inclusive government, more, let's say, a more liberal, modern government, if that is the right term in connection with the Taliban, the international community will recognize that and will also reward them for it.
Right.
So I think really the ball is in the court of the Taliban. They simply have to be shown to be competent and efficient and not to embark on infighting, which paralyzes any government in the world.
Mr. Ahmad, the Taliban has been talking from day one that any arrangement will be in accordance with the Sharia law, which of course is the ultimate document that the Taliban originally, when it was established, the core document in mind. And now it's likely to be continuing. But the question is how to interpret it. We also see Sharia law being very much respected in many other countries and by many different social groups. So the interpretation of it is becoming ever more important. Now, Mr. Ahmad, given your knowledge, how much leeway do you see within the Taliban history and its makeup today that interpretation and new implementation of the Sharia law will be like?
Right. I mean, I think that the Taliban government, like all other Muslim regimes that particularly rely on this idea that the republic or the country's laws must be in compliance with the Sharia Islamic law or the prophetic practice and so on. For example, even the Taliban now, we know that when it was in power in the 1990s, it did not allow women to go to school. And despite whatever complications that exist now, it is at least verbally said that that girls will be able to go to school and up to university and so on. So clearly they have reinterpreted something in order to make this change. So this is it's always a process of contestation, and it will be a process of contestation and pragmatism within the Taliban itself.
Professor Laris.
Yeah, I think the big question is how pragmatic will the Taliban be, or how ideological will they be? And I think that is a question which we can't answer now, but the next few weeks and months will say that. And we all hope that the Taliban will go down the pragmatic road and do not stick to that ideologialism which many in the West and in the rest of the world fear. But we can't be sure right now.
Professor Joe.
Yes. I think the interpretation of Sharia varies in one way or another. Because we can take one thing, for example, Malaysia also have the 3 northern states. They also implement the Sharia law. But I think the real implementation is very different from what people think. Even ideology can also be explained one way or another. So we can hardly say Taliban may have enough flexibility to implement the Sharia law, cannot strictly implement the previous orthodox, previous ideas, theories of Sharia law. They may have more flexibility, and they will explain their flexibility. Why? Because it is best for to govern the country, rather than it is just damage the country, damage their rule by just implementing strictly the Sharia law. I think that they don't have enough flexibility.
How should we compare now Afghanistan, 1 month after Taliban went into Kabul and took control mostly of the country, compared to the 20 years of Afghanistan, which at times apparently were peaceful, but under foreign occupation mainly, or a government that has been supported by foreign occupation? I think this is a ever-evolving question, and there will be ever-evolving answer, but I'm really curious about what is your answer now?
Well, the big advantage now is that the war is over and that Afghanistan, for the first time essentially for almost 20 years, is largely at peace, and that there's no wartime situation. And that is appreciated by the Afghanistan people, particularly those in the countryside, where, of course, most of the fighting took place, where most of the killing took place. This is an enormous advantage, and the Taliban should make use of that and become more pragmatic, as we discussed. However, some of the achievements of the last 20 years, what we call a civil society, including the rights of women, the rights of journalists, the rights of many diverse groups in Afghanistan, that, of course, was also an achievement which doesn't need to be overlooked. And the Taliban will find it difficult to maintain these achievements, but I hope that not all of these achievements will be dismissed and forgotten about, that some can be maintained.
Professor Zhou.
Yes, I think the most remarkable progress for Taliban is made the whole country calm, the social order calm. There's no chaos, no further conflict. So this is a progress they made. But also some other things which have not made progress. That is to say, just to give more rights to women and just to give more liberty, more freedom to the common people. I think right now they need some time to make some progress.
Mr. Ahmad.
Yeah, I think that I'll echo this idea that we shouldn't underestimate the desire, the excitement of ordinary Afghans at peace in the country, in a context where there's been perpetual conflict, particularly outside of Kabul in the countryside. So I think that we shouldn't underestimate that at all. And I think that that's where some of the goodwill comes from, and even the so-called resistance led by Ahmed Shah Massoud's son and others. One of the reasons why it doesn't seem like they're getting much traction is because, again, people are not interested in further violence and further conflict right now. They are giving the Taliban a chance in this setting to perhaps advance the country forward, maintain some of the as Professor Lars was saying, some of the hard-won gains that they have, and so on. But again, this is a work in progress, and hopefully it'll work for the better.
We hope it is a work in progress. Thank you so much for all of you, Junaid Ahmad, Klaus Laris, Zhou Rong. Thank you, gentlemen. And you're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Coming up, China's mammoth energy company in a massive transition to green energy at the core of the country's carbon neutrality efforts. What's the strategy? Direct answers from the executive chairman of the State Grid. Next.
我们现在呢，在
Welcome back. This is World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Who powers China? The answer, quite literally, is of course the world's largest public utility company, the State Grid Corporation of China. It's a mega state-owned Chinese enterprise that ranks second on the Fortune Global 500 list. State Grid ensures that more than 1 billion Chinese can have their lights on and computers are charged. As China pledges to transition to green power, how State Grid generates its electricity plays a key role in that process. In March this year, State Grid released its action plan for carbon neutrality, in which the company plans to transmit more clean energy between regions, install more clean power generating capacity, and focus on using innovative and cutting-edge technologies to step up power grids. On all of these, I talked to the executive chairman of State Grid from China, Mr. Xin Baoan. Let's hear his answers. Carbon neutral. So tell me more about how your sector is likely to implement that goal.
中国能源行业的碳排放
In China, the energy sector accounts for more than 80% of the country's total carbon emissions.
实现双碳目标
Therefore, to realize China's climate goals means China's energy industry must speed up transformation itself to become cleaner and more sustainable. Our industry will face a systematic and fundamental reform, facing both challenges and opportunities.
面临着许多的挑战，也有很多机遇。挑战在于呢，
The challenge lies in the fact that the old energy model is no longer sustainable, so we have to remodel the entire system while securing energy supply. As one can imagine, that's a very difficult task.
可想而知是非常艰巨的，而且利益
Moreover, the distribution of interest will also drastically change.
但是也有机遇。
But there are also opportunities. In the process of transition to clean energy, new business forms and models will emerge in large numbers, creating opportunities and fostering new growth drivers.
说如果抓住机会了，
If we can catch this opportunity, then our traditional energy companies will achieve a big leap in upgrading themselves.
发展的一个重要的机遇。
It seems that you are having the lights in your eyes talking about the new opportunities. Really want to know, President Xi of China talking about using new energy for new power system in China. How does that work?
那么与传统的电力系统相比呢，
Compared with traditional power systems, a new power system has 4 main features.
Okay.
第一个是从供给侧来看，
The first new feature comes from the supply side. New energy has gradually become dominant in both generation and consumption. For a long time, coal, natural gas, and other fossil energy covers a majority of China's energy mix. However, in the past decade, power generation of wind, solar, and other new energy sources have developed remarkably in China, with a share of installed capacity rising from 5% to 24%. Meanwhile, the share of coal-fired electricity has been decreasing.
煤电的装机的比重逐年下降。
In 2020, coal plants fell to a historic share of less than 50%.
50%以下。
We estimate that by 2030, the installed capacity of new energy will surpass coal-fired and become the largest power source in China.
第一大电源。2060年前呢，
By 2060, the new energy generation is expected to exceed 50% of total power generation in China and become the country's main source of energy supply.
那么从用户侧看啊，
Now let's look at changes on the demand side, which are manifested in the high penetration of electrification and the emergence of a large number of what we call prosumers.
产销者大量涌现。什么意思呢？
怎么理解？
就是
Let me explain what these mean. Electric power is a high quality and clean secondary energy. With the construction of a power system based on new energy, the use of electricity will be further expanded and extended to many other areas that were not electrified. For example, in the field of electric vehicles, China now accounts for more than 5 million EVs, accounting for half of the world total, and this number is still growing at an extraordinary speed.
而且现在电动汽车的发展速度也是非常的快。再比如像居民清洁取暖。
Another example is residential heating with clean energy. In North China, people used to burn wood or coal for heating. Now we are pushing hard for people to use electricity instead of coal. So now many more people are using clean energy to heat their apartments and to cook in winter.
那么同时也出现了一些新的电力用户啊，这些用户呢，既是电力的消费者，也是电力的生产者。
In the meantime, prosumers have emerged who are both consumers and producers of electricity. For instance, people who install PV generation systems on their roofs. When there is excess, they can sell residual electricity to the grid company. And when there's a deficit, they can buy electricity from the grid company.
还可以从电网买电，啊，另外比如说电动汽车。
EV owners are also prosumers. They can charge their vehicles during off-peak hours and sell the electricity stored in their car batteries back to the grids during peak hours. These new phenomenons will cause profound changes to the relationship between the production and selling of power.
将使电力的产销关系发生深刻的变化。
Fundamental changes almost.
So that was new energy on the user side. Next is the grid system.
从电网侧看呢，
The new energy grid structure will have large grids, taking the lead while other types of grids merge and coexist.
形态相容并进的这样一个格局。
So that means more competition?
我觉得竞争和发展它是相容并进的。
I think competition and development go hand in hand. This new layout of grid development will efficiently enable the exploration of new energy and support the connection of all kinds of electricity loads. We will strongly work to make breakthroughs in key technologies. We plan to invest $46 billion as R&D funds in the next decade to tackle key technological issues in power systems based on new energy.
460亿美元实施新型电力系统科技攻关行动计划。
In addition, digital technology will be used to upgrade the grid. The State Grid New Energy Cloud, the world's largest new energy service platform, is in operation, connecting 2 million wind farms and PV power stations with new energy installed capacity reaching 470 gigawatts. We have also set up the world's largest smart service platform for the Internet of EVs, integrating over 1.3 million charging stations.
累计接入的充电桩超过了130万个。那么从整个系统来看，
Lastly, new energy means the entire mechanism of how the electricity system operates will be changed significantly.
发生深刻的变化。那么在新型电力系统中啊，
New power generation is fluctuating and random in nature. Therefore, electricity companies don't have absolute control on the supply side. This means we must work on power storage technologies and complement that with demand-side policy measures. Only by coordinating power source, power grid, power load, and power storage can we achieve demand and supply balance in the new energy age.
源、网、和、储互动，来实现电力供需的一个动态的平衡。所以总的来看呢，这4个方面的特征啊，
So the deep changes brought by the new energy system are most evident in these 4 aspects.
So it seems that, Mr. Xian, there are so many changing factors going on all at the same time. So what would that mean to your work in a way? How would you plan with a clear vision?
习近平主席提出双碳目标以后啊，
After President Xi announced the 2030 and 2060 climate goals, we at once began to do research and draw up an action plan. Given our role in the industry, State Grid is determined to be a leader, promoter, and a pioneer in clean energy transition.
努力争当能源清洁低碳转型的引领者、推动者和先行者。
So all your workers, all your colleagues know about this.
是的，我们现在
Yes, that's the goal we are all working towards. In March, we released the first carbon peak and carbon neutral action plan among energy enterprises in China.
碳达峰、碳中和的行动方案。我们今年的7月份，
Then in July, we announced a plan to achieve major technological breakthrough. In the next 5 years, we plan to invest $350 billion to upgrade the entire power grid.
未来5年内啊，我们公司计划投入这个3500亿美元，啊，推动整个电网啊转型升级。
350 billion. It's a lot of money. So, have you ever thought about whether it will be really worthwhile?
啊，我们的投资呢，
The transformation to and development of clean energy is a great feat, so investing in this is the right thing to
这
do.
个这样一项伟大的工程啊投资，首先方向是正确的。
Secondly, doing major scientific research and building new grids do require funding. So as a company, we think it is very much worth the investment in terms of its financial return, its social impact, and in contributing to the development of clean
企
energy.
业的经济效益，啊，社会效益，还是推动能源的清洁低碳转型，我们觉得都是非常值得的。
Mr. Shin, many are interested in China, how you are going to develop not only by yourself but also with others. So Belt and Road Initiative, how you've been contributing to the Belt and Road Initiative, how many opportunities and challenges for you and your company when you are developing your projects on the Belt and Road?
能源合作是“一带一路”的重点领域。
Energy cooperation is a key area in the Belt and Road. In recent years, we have been operating on the principle of mutual benefit and win-win cooperation to expand our international reach. We have successfully invested in and operated backbone energy networks in 9 countries and regions. We have achieved a great deal in grid interconnection and international energy production cooperation.
比如说在巴西，
In Brazil, for example, we built 2 power highways with UHV technology.
电力高速公路，成功的将亚马逊
This project is able to transmit clean hydropower from the Amazon to load centers such as Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo some 2,000 kilometers away. These power highways have been giving a strong boost to local economic and social development and is helping Brazil's transition towards clean energy.
那么下一步呢，我们将深度的参与“一带一路”的建设，啊，坚持绿色发展。
Going forward, we will deeply participate in the Belt and Road, adhere to the principles of green development. We will strive to make more contributions to countries and regions along the Belt and Road in terms of conserving local ecology, saving energy, and reducing emission. On one hand, we will work with them to make technological breakthroughs, to solve common problems encountered in energy transition. Second, by leveraging our experience and advantages in building new energy grids, we will better serve our international peers through project development and technical
方
consultancy.
式更好的服务啊相关国家和地区能源清洁低碳转型。第三呢，将绿色环保的理念贯穿到我们境外
And last, throughout the whole process of our overseas investment, construction, and operation, we will adhere to the principle of environmental protection. We will fulfill our corporate social responsibility and promote the harmonious coexistence of man and nature.
推动人与自然和谐共生。
What you just said about green, about environmental protection, how is that implemented in your Belt and Road Initiative?
国家电网公司走出去，
As SGCC is extending our services abroad, the idea is to have green and low carbon steps at the core of everything we do. From project selection to construction to management, everything has to be green in mind.
从项目的选、建、管，要全面的贯彻。
Again, to use our electricity superhighway project in Brazil as an example, it's a classic case of using hydropower to develop clean and low carbon energy. The ultra high voltage direct current transmission project sends electricity from hydropower stations in the Amazon region in the north to the consumption centers like southern megacities Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. The Brazilian government is pleased with it, and so are the local people.
老百姓广泛的赞誉。今后我们要在这方面更多的
This is precisely the kind of project we would like to work on in the future. We are willing to devote our time, resources, money, and people to these works.
Sounds romantic, the Amazon River water and for the power generation. State Grid is one of the biggest companies in the world. And now we're facing a world with tremendous uncertainties. Geopolitics, the pandemic, you name it. So, as someone who's leading such a company, what does that mean? How are you making your daily decisions?
确实，现在呢，世界正经历着100年未有之大变局。
Indeed, the world is currently going through a historical transformation. Our operations overseas are affected by many events, not least the pandemic. To be frank, it's getting more and more challenging for us in the overseas market.
挑战越来越大，啊。
But what we need to remember is that economic globalization is here to stay. This general trend will not change, and the energy transition to low carbon will not stop.
这个大势不会变。
It's a global consensus that we need to counter climate change. It's also every country's shared responsibility. So for us, as an enterprise, as long as we are doing our business in line with these major trends, then we will certainly be able to overcome any confusion and difficulty that's on the way.
我们就一定能够克服我们在发展中遇到的各种困惑、各种困难。
Thank you so much, Mr. Xin. What a pleasure.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
Executive Chairman of the State Grid, talking about innovation and the future of carbon neutrality. That's all we have for today. If you'd like to see more, search World Insight. Check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of the team. Thanks for watching.